Welcome back to AI for the Humanities. I'm Megan McInnes Dominguez, Associate Professor of Spanish at the University of Delaware, and this channel is your go to destination for thoughtful, critical, and creative explorations of generative AI and its intersections with the humanities. We dig into the latest developments in AI, from large language models to image and music generators, while asking big questions about ethics, authorship, identity, culture, and the future of education. Today, I'm excited to welcome back one of our returning interns, Riley Bell, a junior at the University of Delaware, majoring in three languages and English, with minors in linguistics and Asian studies. In Riley's first video, he introduced us to Claude, Anthropic's conversational AI assistant known for its fluency in language based tasks and its thoughtful safety design. In this follow up video, Riley returns with a close look at Claude 3.7. He walks us through new features such as project tracking, web search, and tooltips, using a real world grant writing task to demonstrate Claude's growing capabilities. But this isn't just a demo. Riley also brings an important ethical lens to the conversation, raising questions about authorship, labor, academic integrity, and increasing automation of tasks once considered uniquely human. If you're using Claude in the classroom, thinking about AI's role in your scholarship, or just trying to keep up with its rapid evolution, this video is packed with practical insights and critical questions. Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome back to AI for the Humanities. My name is Riley Bell, and I am currently a junior here at the University of Delaware pursuing a double major in English and three languages for Spanish, Chinese, and Korean. And this is the second part in a two-part video series for the spring 2025 semester as I do research on Claude, a personal assistant based on an LLM that is developed by the company Anthropic. I'm going to jump right on in today into the itinerary that I have and then introduce what we're going to be discussing today. So in my last video, I introduced Claude, the personal assistant developed by Anthropic. So we're going to start with a review of the features that I previously discussed and then go into a couple of the major updates that have come out since that video, because AI is naturally a very, very quickly progressing technology and field. And then I want to go into two demonstrations of a couple of the new, most important and impressive features that Claude has through an application with grant writing, which will include web search, and a demonstration of Claude's summarizing abilities with my own research that I've done for this course. Moving into the last part of the video, we'll discuss Anthropic's report and some of the key findings that the company has made on how students specifically are using the AI tool, and then discuss a couple of the ethics concerns as AI has the potential to replace traditionally human jobs and affect the way that students are learning in our classrooms. So, previously on AI for the Humanities, I discussed Claude, which, as I've mentioned a few times, is a personal assistant developed by the company Anthropic. It is a text and chat-based, like a standard chatbot AI that is, I think, kind of AI that a lot of people will be familiar with. Anthropic is a public benefit company, so they develop Claude with the intention of public benefit and bringing a service to the public that isn't for profit and won't cause harm. So part of the way that they develop the AI is to have character built into Claude in the way that the information that Claude retrieves is presented to the user, as well as the user interface and the way that Claude interacts with its user. Claude is also integrated with Google, so you can connect it to your Google Calendar, email, Drive, etc., and allow Claude access into your files and the kind of professional or academic situation that you have to give it more context for the work that you're doing and the kind of things that you have in your background. At the time of my last video, Claude actually had a locked knowledge base, which is something that I at the time considered to put it behind other tools such as Gemini and ChatGPT, for example. At the time of my last video, its knowledge base was locked with each update of the tool that came out. So at the time, it was locked in October 2024, except for major world and political events such as the presidential elections. But since then, Anthropic has introduced to Claude the ability to search the web, which we'll see later in my demonstration. I also demonstrated two potential humanities applications of Claude, one in a linguistics demo showing how Claude's training and background knowledge with linguistics concepts allowed it to take a novel sentence I wrote in Spanish and break it down into phonetics and syntax and analyses. So I had Claude write an IPA transcription of the Spanish sentence, as well as break it down and then construct a visible syntax tree to show how the different parts of the sentences came together. A notable flaw in Claude's work there was that the IPA transcription for Spanish did not follow all of the conventions that we would typically expect out of Spanish linguistics. It was a solid transcription, but as an academic in that field and who has an extended experience with Spanish linguistics, I was able to recognize that and then prompt engineer Claude to give me a more accurate transcription. So just a demonstration of how there are these humanities applications, but they're still not quite perfectly there yet. Another application that I demonstrated was how Claude can be a language chat partner or break down, and explain sentences in different languages that may not even be Spanish. So Claude has that knowledge base and then can come up with new and creative sentences to kind of ping pong back and forth with a language learner and give them the opportunity to practice their language skills and get feedback on it in an environment where they may not necessarily have a language partner if that is not accessible. I will note, however, that researchers have said human partners offer richer social engagement, and that is one of the biggest things that has come up as an ethics concern that I brought up in my last video, and I'm going to continue bringing up, is that AI lacks the social component, especially for humanities and language-based learning, which is something that, at least until now, hasn't been replicated. So human interaction and human instruction remains the most comprehensive way to teach in some of these fields. But moving into the new features that I would like to discuss today, I'm looking at projects and web search. So projects, if anyone has ever used Google's Notebook LLM, is kind of reminiscent of that. Projects is a feature of Claude that allows you to upload multiple documents to the same kind of project window or the project area, which gives Claude personalized work context for a specific project that you'd like to work on. So you can upload multiple documents into the same workspace. Claude will analyze them and have almost like a background understanding of what you're trying to do. And then what I found interesting about Claude's take on this projects feature was that you can give it personalized instructions, not just for each of these documents, but overall. So after uploading all of the documents, you can say, I want you to look at these documents or look at this project from this angle or focus on this aspect of it specifically as you analyze and give me feedback, which we'll see in the demonstration. Web search also, as I mentioned, was introduced, a feature that ChatGPT and some other chatbots have had for a while now, but where Claude differs in their web search is that they maintain the character that Anthropic's developers are developing within Claude. So it has a conversational aspect to it. It'll say, sure, for example, it'll say, sure, I'm going to search the web for this, and I'm going to search these different sources and gather those for you. Give me one moment while it searches. After retrieving those sources, Claude will also hold itself accountable. There's always a disclaimer that says, information may not be accurate. For really critical pieces of information that you need, check the original source. And Claude provides direct link citations to where it's getting the information, allowing the users to more easily fact check that information when it is important. So I'm going to switch very briefly over into my demo window and start with my applications for grant writing. So I'm in the Claude window now. We have our chats and projects. Projects are showing up here on the side, and Claude comes equipped with a basic default project that shows you how to use it. It also explains how to use Claude overall. But for the sake of this demo, I'm going to click New Project. I'm going to call this English 314 Grant Proposal for the grant writing class that I'm currently taking. I may say, for this project, I am trying to create a comprehensive, tightly knit narrative to support my mock grant proposal for class. It's not necessary to put the project description, but I thought, why not, for the sake of this demonstration. So once that project window is open, we still have the basic Claude interface. This project in particular is private, but there is the option to share and invite collaborators. I'm not going to do so because I don't have anyone to collaborate with me. But in addition to the basic Claude window that we have here, we can toggle between models, just like normal, add documents, screenshots, anything that will help us get Claude the context that it needs for its analysis. Extended thinking and the user styles are all standard features. Web search, as we'll see here, is toggled on. So you can also choose whether or not you want Claude to search the web. And I'm going to keep it on for this project for a specific use that I'll show later. So Claude says, keep conversations organized and reuse project knowledge, which is the whole foundation of this feature. So project knowledge, our box over here, shows not only the option to add text content, files from GitHub or Google Drive, or also to upload your own files, but to set the project instructions, which is optional. For the sake of the grant proposal, because grant proposals can be very, very tricky, I'm going to set instructions and say, focus on the cohesiveness of my grant proposal and give me feedback for where I can make it more consistent / tie the narrative together. So before I even uploaded any documents, this instruction is the one that Claude is going to take and process as it's working with this. So I have a couple of files that I'm going to upload. For this demonstration, I have my project need and description, my evaluation plan, and my program outcome indicator chart, which for the sake of this class is just introducing not your nonprofit organization, but introducing where you've identified a need within a population, describing the program that you're going to create to do so, and then how you're going to evaluate the efficacy of that program, that project, and what outcomes you're looking for and what metrics you're going to use. So I'm going to drag these files right over into the project knowledge. Here we go. I have them in PDF form. And we can see here that Claude will kind of give you like a little preview of how many lines are in each of these files and the knowledge capacity used. So this is another case I may have mentioned before of Claude's knowledge capacity and its context window being limited to the demand at the time, which there's not much that you can do about that, except have the pro version of Claude, which I currently have for the sake of this research. But I will say that if you're working with the free version, you will not have nearly as much leeway for how many documents you're going to upload. So maybe I'll start out by saying, summarize the project that this student is working on. Give Claude some time to think. There we go. The instructions that I had put in for this project before, the cohesiveness and ways to strengthen the narrative, are the background instructions that Claude will be thinking about. Then first, a summary. So this is also, I would say these drafts are from earlier in the semester before I put them all together into one draft and then got to do some revision and conferencing with my professor. So some of this may not be 100% consistent with what I'm currently doing. And taking a look here, we can see your project, Bridge Gap Initiative, then an explanation of the most highlighted points of the statement of need, how much money the project is seeking, which that number went way up after I worked on the budget and learned how much things actually cost, and then a brief overview of the evaluation plan. So Claude, in its analysis and feedback, can identify strengths, areas for improvement, and then explaining how improving in these areas will create the more cohesive narrative, which is the background instruction that I have given Claude. So for each of these different bullet points, these are areas where Claude has identified that as the writer, as the grant preparer, or the grant proposal preparer, that I could improve my application. When we think about the ethical use of AI, Claude, as I've mentioned several times, being a text-based assistant at nature, I could also say, could you take these suggestions that you gave and rewrite the proposal with them? And here we are. Notably, this is a personal, paid, professional version of this AI tool. But it is kind of like ringing alarm bells in my ethical brain that, Claude, for all of the character and all of the um, teacher like nature that Anthropic has programmed into it, let's say. Um, every time you ask Claude a question, it'll break it down into multiple steps. It'll explain where it's, coming from with each and why it's giving the feedback in that way. But then, if asked, it can also just completely rewrite the assignment, taking into consideration the feedback that it gave, which I and I imagine many of my professors and peers would consider to be um, a dishonest and punishable or academically punishable use of AI to create new content that is not students' original work. Um, it's still going, it's still going. Um, but the point of this demonstration is to show the capabilities of the project, how you can give Claude more context and more of its own workspace to collaborate with you on a project, and how there is also room to tell it basically anything that you need that you want to focus on for developing that work. The other feature that I want to demonstrate through this grant proposal is the web search feature and how it can be useful for researchers, not only in the grant proposal field, but for other fields as well. Claude already has this list of questions. The first one, the message I just worked with, explaining and giving me feedback. But I'm going to ask now, after reading this grant, there are these sections of the grant proposal. Could you search the web for 10 to 15 potential sources of funding? And this is actually a very exciting feature of Claude that, see, this is something I've actually encountered while working with the projects feature before in my research. The feed or the custom description and the custom commands that I gave to Claude, which was to analyze the cohesiveness and then, think about the narrative. They take those instructions and use it in every chat, which I think is a little bit redundant, especially because analyzing the cohesiveness isn't really relevant to the question that I asked, but it'll go ahead and give those strengths and weaknesses again, and then move on to the next question that you give. So this is actually a very exciting feature of Claude for grant fund for grant writers and for nonprofit leaders, but also for academics and researchers who have a topic and they have a project in mind, but they need a little bit of help in looking for sources. So this project specifically is for funding sex ed and for youth education for LGBT youth in the United States. And so for each kind of facet of the project, Claude has said, I'm going to come up with these different funding opportunities. In this drop-down menu, we have the result for each from different foundations and sources of funding that are linked directly and categorized based on Claude. Claude also lists them out here as 15 potential funding sources and then explaining each and how it relates to the project. So this is just a demonstration of not only can Claude search the web as many other chatbots can do, but when it does, it remains very objective, ever explanatory about how it got to those conclusions, why these are the best results that it could have given, and then also connects the user with those so that their project or whatever they're doing is not, completely hands off and completely left up to the AI tool. So this is just two very brief demonstrations of how the projects and how the web search could help in the context of nonprofit management and grant writing. And for the next demonstration I mentioned on my slides, we're going to go into a demo of reflecting on my LSU 467 research journals, which is the class code for this research class. So kind of like a meta way to make Claude reflect about itself and then reflect on the research that I've done as well. Switching back to the Claude demo, I'm going to make a new project here. I'm just going to call it LSU 467 Reflections. Create my project. I'm not going to instruct the Claude to do anything with the project because I'm, only have a couple questions here to ask, and it's not that in-depth of a research project. And then I will go into my journals. I have 7 journals to upload today. And as they all plunk in there, we can see the knowledge capacity is going up. And now that my journals are in, I'm going to ask Claude, what do you think? No, I'd rather start, what are these journals about? There we are, Riley Bell. Between February and May 25 tracks Riley's experience with Claude, its features, and development for Professor Megan McInnes-Dominguez's class. So, Claude gave me a brief overview, my initial impressions, testing Claude's abilities, exploring the computer use function, HTML coding, projects feature, and then the addition of the web search. So, in chronological order, all the things that I've discovered, learned about Claude this semester, and then covered in my journals as I ponder what to add to these videos. Yep, the evolution of Claude's capabilities over this period while Riley testing the AI on tasks related to linguistics, coding, academic writing, and project management. Sure, certainly. I know AI tools aren't people, but Claude in particular is programmed to act very, very personably, so I may ask, since you're Claude, what do you think of this student's reflections about you? Hmm. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely a reminder of how quickly AI tools evolve. Um, but just with the background knowledge that AI tools are not sentient, um, it's interesting to see that this kind of question can be answered by Claude, and that it's using the first person, and you know almost in conversation, which has been a pretty much a standard for this AI research since February, but it's just an interesting way to see AI being used. With this demo done and these two demos aside, I would like to move back into more of an ethics discussion and a discussion of Anthropic's report on student usage because student and academic applications are the ones with which I interact the most. So I'm going to go over a couple of key findings. Anthropic actually did a report that was published on their blog by their staffers and by their developers on student usage. It's a very long report. I have it cited at the end of this presentation, but the key findings that Anthropic listed from that report were that STEM students, so think engineering, think math, science, and they said particularly computer science students are the early adopters of Claude. So English students, business students, language students, any other humanities or social sciences have been not quite as quick to adopt Anthropic for its usage, which may reflect Claude's particular proclivity for coding, for HTML development, for debugging code. Um, However, among the students that use it, there's an equal presence of direct problem solving, direct output creation, collaborative problem solving, and collaborative output creation um, as their students are using it. The third takeaway that I thought was the most critical for considering ethics perspectives is that students primarily use, and this is directly quoted from their report, the students primarily use AI systems for creating, which means using information to learn something new, and analyzing, so taking apart some piece of media, some piece of documentation, then identifying relationships and explaining it in a new way. And what I really want to highlight from Anthropic's report is that this aligns with higher order cognitive functions according to Bloom's taxonomy and raises questions about ensuring that students don't offload critical cognitive tasks to AI systems. In the case of academic language or breaking down content and explaining it in a new way, this seems to me almost like an entry-level use of AI and one that is could be more ethically implemented in the classroom for things to be explained to students in a different way. But learning new information and trying to break information down to understand it at a more basic level such that you can describe it in different ways does represent very important cognitive tasks that traditionally have been left to teachers to work with their students and to students themselves to take peer-reviewed academic and approved curricula to take in that knowledge in the past. So thinking about education in the future, a couple of researchers, namely Xie Haoran and others, have noted that the quick evolving nature of AI requires us to think about new ways and new conversations about how AI is going to be implemented into the classroom. Specifically thinking about education and cognitive function, the cognitive impact on K through 12 students in particular has been a very, very hot topic of debate ever since the COVID-19 pandemic because, for example, Chromebooks and laptops have been more ubiquitously introduced into classrooms, and a lot of the teaching modes have become online for convenience since COVID-19. So a concern that educators and myself have is that AI will be too accessible to students in the classroom, and that AI, being such the quick evolving technology that it is, doesn't have enough leashes on it, if you will, to make sure that students are still developing in these cognitive functioning areas as they should healthily be developing, and not relying too heavily on AI to replace those functions. Anthropic released a version of Claude, as has Google with Gemini, meant for education and meant for implementation in the classroom, that has some restrictions on certain features, but speaking pragmatically, the plain fact of the matter is that AI is available for not too much money on a monthly subscription on personal accounts, and its internet access is more accessible to children and to young academics and students more so now than ever. So I don't think there's truly any way to keep AI out of the hands of students or academics, and without the proper response from professors and from institutions, AI is a very, very appealing way to process information. It's very appealing because it's almost like an easy way out. I recognize the really, really cool things that AI has been able to do and the breakthroughs that companies have made in the field and how incredible the technology is, but it is evolving very quickly, and I don't think that I don't think it's possible to restrain use in the ways that is needed to make sure that students, professionals, and academics can maintain integrity with their learning, with their work, and with developing those cognitive functions. There's just too much wiggle room. There's too much that AI can do and too little that we know about its effects yet. So it's, impactful, and I appreciate that Anthropic has, the metrics and the people dedicated to going through their student usage and reporting on how the students are using it, because this will be important in the future for researchers looking back and, reflecting on Claude and others as early implementations start to make their way into the educational sphere. So, kind of went over this already, but my remaining ethics concerns, of course, are the originality of students' work and research, because AI, being a chat-based AI, at least being a very powerful tool for analysis, for rephrasing, for getting feedback, getting a second pair of eyes on your work if you don't have like an essay partner or a professor isn't available. As powerful as they are, there are not stopgaps on AI to completely overwrite that work itself with its text-based functionality. So for students and for professionals, the originality of work and research remains a concern of mine. I am concerned about a decline of students' cognitive ability, particularly in those K through 12 students, despite Anthropic and other companies partnering with schools and creating school enterprise versions. And to be honest, over-reliance on AI tools. For learning, for academics, and for the humanities in particular, these are fields that have relied on the thorough nature of the work that we do as humanities students and as humanities researchers. So in these small ways where AI can maybe search the web and help us find sources, I fear that over-reliance on AI tools, for example, solely depending on AI to summarize articles and glean information from them rather than reading, yourself for research, as just one example, is an ethical concern that remains for me as we seek to implement these tools into our research and into our professional lives. So for today, in addition to the sources that I've kind of been holding in my mind from my first video, I'm looking at the report from Anthropic's commitment to navigating AI in education, and research from Xie Haozhan and others on the implementation of modern AI into education. But thank you. It's been a interesting semester getting to dig into Claude and into AI and hearing the perspectives from my classmates as well. So I am very grateful for the time that I got to spend with this tool, and I am grateful for the space to explore and better inform myself on how these tools can work and how we as students have to navigate that. So I'm looking forward to wrapping the semester up and finishing my guidebook. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this thought-provoking episode featuring Riley Bell and his exploration of Claude 3.7. What I continue to admire in Riley's work is the balance he strikes between technical clarity and ethical inquiry. He doesn't just show us what Claude can do. He helps us reflect on what it means when a generative AI model begins to reshape how students write, learn, and even navigate everyday life. Riley's walkthrough of Claude's projects and web search tools offers a practical, real-world example of how AI can assist with tasks like grant writing. And his demonstration reminds us how seamlessly Claude can synthesize, revise, and even overwrite original work. These functions raise essential questions. When is AI a helpful partner? When does it become a replacement? And how do we ensure that human agency, creativity, and voice are not lost in the process? Riley also engages critically with Anthropic's own student usage report, offering a nuanced view on how Claude is already being used in higher education, from tutoring and brainstorming to editing and beyond. And his analysis of Claude's new suggestion tooltips, ranging from parenting advice to career decisions, highlights a key concern: the quiet encroachment of AI into emotional, cultural, and relational domains traditionally filled by humans. As Riley makes clear, these are not just technical upgrades. They're signals of a much broader shift. AI tools like Claude are becoming more embedded, more powerful, and more personal. And it is precisely in this moment that the humanities must offer a guiding voice. If you appreciated this video, please like, subscribe, and share it with fellow educators, students, and thinkers navigating this AI-infused world. Thank you again to Riley for his careful work, and thank you for being part of the AI for the Humanities community. See you next time.
Type before I even thought, wrote the grant I never fought, made it clean, made it quick, but left me wondering, was it me who clicked? It organizes, it smooths the seams, but what about the voice in dreams? The second guess, the searching line, the fragile truth that once was mine. Whose voice is this behind the screen? So polished now, it's hard to glean. Is it my hand or Claude's reply? The lines blur more with every try. It offers thoughts on life and love. It's quoting Nietzsche, push and shove. It makes the world more simple, flat. But where's the weight of feeling that? Students ask, can Claude respond? But where's the silence reflect upon? When wisdom comes too fast to need, it skips the part that makes us think. Whose voice is this behind the screen? A mirror made of code and dreams. Do I still write, or do I steer, or let it whisper what I wanna hear? Whose voice is this? Maybe now it's both. Don't forget the silence we wrote. Whose voice is this behind the screen?